Hey folks, LTZ here with a little something different. Today I'm going to talk to you about one of my holy grails. Holy grail, essentially an idea, a concept, something that you are chasing after, that's a bit of a prize, if you will, based on King Arthur's legend of the Holy Grail and all of that mythology surrounding it. And I feel like many magical practitioners and witches tend to have several different things that we're on the hunt for, whether it's an ingredient or a book or tool, something like that, just the thing that excites us. And so one of mine is the Serendipity books, which are a series of children's books that first came out in the late 70s, early 80s, and apparently they were re-released a little bit later again in the 90s, and I think in as recently as the last decade. These books are written by Stephen Cosgrove and illustrated by Robin James, and they are why are they my holy grail? Well, I used to have a big collection of them as a child, and they stayed at my parents' home while I was off doing, becoming an adult. And unfortunately, my whole collection of those books that didn't come with me were destroyed in a hurricane. There was flooding, and that's where the books were, and they no longer ceased to exist. And it's kind of a crushing thing. I think your children's book, why do they matter? And they matter for, well, one of the main reasons is that these books are so beautifully illustrated that they had a huge influence on how I saw the world and inspired me to create art. And I enjoyed the stories too. So it's come into, I made a bit of a joke because recently I had one of those holy grail moments of like, aha, here it is. So the other week I was with friends down in Connecticut at a really big used bookstore, and I couldn't believe it. Like I go to every used bookstore. I always check in the children's section, which always makes me feel a little bit weird that I'm here in like the primary readers, because I don't have children, but the cats don't really appreciate having things read to them. But I think it's only been once at one other bookstore in Washington that I managed to find a couple copies. So they're kind of unbelievably hard to find, even though they shouldn't be. I think it's because people are holding on to them, right? These are great books, hold on to them. So I walked in and I saw this little basket after perusing the shelves, and I pick out a copy, and there's one, and then there's another one, and then there's another one. And I ended up getting something like a dozen different copies. I was only first going to get the ones that I particularly had as a kid, and then I was like, oh, fuck it. I'm gonna get them all. I'm gonna get the ones I didn't even get to have that I lusted after as a kid. And I have continued on. So I shared a photo of this on Instagram and on Facebook, and each of those got like over 100 comments. So I'm sorry I've not replied to all the comments because it was just overwhelming, like how many of you were like, oh my gosh, I had those too. So my heart is with all of you who commented and expressed joy at this. And I think either this one, Morgan and you, was the first one, or it might have been TT with the turtle. I'm not sure, maybe I got both of these at the same time. Of course, I was a big unicorn nut as a kid, so anything, I also had the Whisper series, which I did give away to a small child when I moved. There was a little girl that lived upstairs from me, and I gave her most of my unicorn book collection, which is fine. It's fine. It was the right thing to do, right? It was right. Just tell me it was right. But I really miss these books. And the kind of one of the funniest thing is, I just fell into, here's a bit of the illustrations, right? There's this lush forest in all of these books. I have this amazing background. And when I moved to Seattle, I was so struck by how familiar it was. And it wasn't until I realized that Robin James and then Stephen as well for a time were based in the Seattle and the Puget Sound area. So much of the landscape that was part of this mythology as a kid for me was exactly where I was living. Like, this is real. Like, I always kind of thought, okay, maybe this is somewhere up in New England, because I was, you know, grew up in New Jersey, Philadelphia area. No, it's perfectly the Pacific Northwest. I mean, look at those pine trees there, and just, you know, lush, beautiful, plenty of ponies. You know, just looking at how these things have been. I mean, look at the gray sky that is typical of the Pacific Northwest. Like, it's to a T. And that was kind of a magical thing for me to realize, because, you know, when you're little, you just kind of associate that things take place somewhere just outside of your own sphere of living. Like, you know, if you're in New Jersey, then you're like, it must be that mystical place of, you know, Pennsylvania or Delaware or, you know, Massachusetts, like somewhere that's just beyond. So I've begun my quest of, you know, repopulating. And the joke that came along with this was, if you read these books as a kid, you're a witch now. Like, I don't make the rules. That's what it is. If you had these books, either you got them from the library or had these copies, there's even, I just got this one, which was supposed to be a paperback, but it came in hardcover, and I'm not complaining either. I mean, like Arabian horses, but dragons and things and crystals. And this is another like big fantasy image stuff. And like, not only is the imagery so gorgeous, but all of these stories have, you know, little morals to them. I understand there were a few that people commented in the thread that were like, oh, this one was not so great. I didn't read those. Like, I feel like I really lucked out in the ones I have read. So there's a couple titles that were probably a bit dubious, especially in the late 70s, early 80s, and definitely do not fit modern context today. But many of them did have really good morals about like how to treat ourselves, how to treat other people, how to treat the environment, and just kind of, I don't know, set shit on the path of understanding spirits, ourselves and each other and the land, and connecting with it. And of course, being based in, you know, all of these being fables, essentially, because they're animal based. So there is, there's another unicorn one. There's one with Pegasus. A little tiny Pegasus in there. There's another Pegasus one. I mean, again, this is like the uber little witchlet nerd camp. But some of the unicorn ones, here's Morgan and Me, had, you know, little humans in there, though I'm not as big a fan of of those as I am of all the animal stories that are out there. So in continuing my quest, though, I have ordered, I found on some used bookstores online. I'm like, that's it. You know, I'm kind of tired of like searching the Holy Grail every time. I'm just going to start ordering them as I see them in good condition. And so this is my hoarding. This is what I do. And I love them. So tell me, did you have these books? I know it's the steam in I live in a 1927 house, so we still have steam radiators. So that's not a cat hissing. That's the house agreeing with me how awesome the books are. So did you have one of these? Do you still have them? Are you of one of the generations where they came out and were re-released and then got, you know, those editions in there? Or what other books from your childhood? I feel like there's so many other books I love to talk about. Like I mentioned in various interviews, and I think even some of my own books, Monica Furlong's Juniper and Wise Child, as being really influential. That's we're going into more young adult. So I think, like, let's not even go into the young adult category yet. Let's just stay within the realm of childhood. What are your most inspiring childhood books that have a key witchy element to it? So, very excited. This one too. Like, I like everything that was kind of horse-like and graceful. I was so much into. There are also bunnies too. Look at Buttermilk. Look at those bunnies. You could just look at these books, and the ones that I had particularly, you can trace a lot of my influences too. So thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Robin, for putting these books out into the world, and to Scholastic and libraries and everywhere for carrying these. And I'm looking forward to hearing your stories. So share them in the comments below. Bye, guys.